You're listening to the Backyard TARDIS Random Thoughts Podcast, part of the Red 5 Network. Hey, Nicholas with the Backyard TARDIS, and here now, officially part of the Red 5 Network. This is actually the first video, a podcast of the Backyard TARDIS Random Thoughts Podcast that I'm recording post becoming part of the Red 5 Network. It won't be the first one you see. You've probably already seen some. That's stuff that I recorded before. But this is the first one officially after it's been announced. It was just announced yesterday. So I'm excited to get recording and get started on this. And jabbed about all that. And I thought most fitting, I wanted to do a bunch of different properties. Look back of what I thought of the property in 2024. What I'm looking forward to or not looking forward to going into 2025. So kind of year-end review / what I'm hoping for. And of course, since I've joined the Red 5 Network, and the one thing that puts everybody in the Red 5 Network in together is our love of Star Wars. And so I figured I'd start it right off with Star Wars. So 2024 is an interesting thing. Much like 2023 was a mixed bag. But I feel like 2023's mixed bag was much more in the middle, whereas this feels much more polar extremes for 2024. And I'm hoping for 2025 to hopefully just start getting good and not having to have like the bad and the good. So in 2023, we had stuff like Ahsoka, which is something that I enjoyed, but it was a guilty pleasure. And I mean that in like, that's the kind of show that if I was watching that, my wife came in the room, I'd probably change it just because she already doesn't like Star Wars and sci-fi and stuff like that, but that's the kind of stuff that's just like, man, I can't see why you like this. There was a lot of things bad with it. However, there was a lot of subtle references to not just Clone Wars and Rebels, but also books and comics and EU stuff, and it was just, there was so much references and hinting at things. It was fun to theorize about. It was fun to look at the mystery. I don't think everything paid off. I certainly don't think everything paid off. And it definitely left me with a bittersweet thing. Mandalorian Season 3. A lot of people were really down on that right from the get-go. Not me. I enjoyed 90% of Mandalorian Season 3. I had one episode, though, that I thought was just really bad. And it was like the point, like, I was a Mando Season 3 defender. A lot of people really disliked Bo-Katan just even being in it. That she was one of the focus, like that she was somehow, it was becoming the Bo-Katan show. I didn't agree with that at all. The show followed Din. Now, at a point, Din was following Bo, so we were seeing Bo-Katan's things, but she wasn't acting out of character for her. And I think they made a mistake. Well, one, just the way the Book of Boba Fett turned out. But the Book of Boba Fett could have been Mando Season 3, then Season 4, and that. Seeing as Din showed up a bunch of that, they could have put a little more Din in there, really changed how they presented Boba Fett, and made that just Mando Season 3, the Book of Boba Fett, like as a subtitle. And this could have been like Mandalorian Season 4, Bo in the throne of Mandalore or something like that, because I feel like if they had they spent the first two seasons tying it in, but if they tied a season to Boba Fett and then they tied a season to Bo-Katan, then people would be more open to the role of the Mandalorian, because in my mind I've theorized that in the end the Mandalorian is going to prove to be Grogu, not Din. That's who the Mandalorian is going to be, that he's going to grow up to be the next Jedi Mandalorian. That's my theory crafting. I know a lot of people are like, oh man, you got to get Grogu out. Grogu is the whole point of the show for me, so yeah, I really, I mean, I like Din and stuff like that, but like the thing that hooked me was Grogu. So getting rid of him, he's the star of the show. Din's the side character. Uh, so for me, that's he's got to be in it. But it was a mixed bag. The episode with Lizzo, now Lizzo and Jack Black being in it, and wasting Christopher Lloyd's character, that was but I had issue, and if you go back and you watch my review of it, sadly I stopped reviewing the Star Wars shows. I want to go back and finish doing that because nobody watched that one. I feel like everybody's like, oh, you're being way too positive on these things. And I went hard on that episode, and it was not hard on the fact that Lizzo and Jack Black were in it. That was super cringeworthy. But the whole moral of that episode, that society was an evil setup, and the fact that Din and Bo like helped maintain that, I just like that. There was all sorts of wrong going on that planet. Anyways, we had stuff like that, but it was the ups and the downs, and we came in and like the Tales of the Jedi was a super high for me. Coming into 2024, what do we have? We have Tales of the Sith. Now, Tales of the Jedi dealt with two Jedi. You had, and both of them don't consider themselves Jedi anymore. So I could see how you could see a similar thing with Tales of the Sith, but Barriss Offee is not a Sith. These is Elsbeth. They're not Sith. They both kind of went dark side, but they never became Sith. So, like, having Tales of the Sith and then not having any Sith in it, it was a real letdown. None of the content was bad. It was just, when you hear Tales of the Sith, what do you want? Oh, you want to see Vader in action. You want to see Palpatine in action. We'd had Tales of the Jedi showed Count Dooku like going down the wrong path, like his slow evolution of that. We could have continued that. We could have seen Count Dooku as a Sith. It ended with him being a Sith when he fought Yaddle there. So, like, what if we go from him from there and get more of his story as he developed as a Sith? Like, how did Palpatine continue to manipulate him? Did he have plans as a Sith to try to overthrow Palpatine and actually make the Confederate army into a good new republic, or whatever? Like, what were his thoughts? What was his? There's so much they could have explored there. They could have gone back and done Ancient Sith. They could have done, they introduced this Malak character, and Ahsoka could have been there. So, yeah, that was a big letdown because, like I said, it was nothing wrong with it. It was just that Vision Season 2. Another one that was a letdown. Some of that is I like anime, and so having all the different anime styles in the first one, I liked a lot of the adaptation. This opened it to the world. There was definitely a lot more animation styles. Not as many of them that I personally appreciate. And then, but there was one thing I noticed, and it was funny because they were talking about how they had so much more freedom than they thought they would. Anything they wanted that. And I'm a dad with a daughter, but I noticed that every one of them was about a little girl who gains the Force and goes on a hero's journey. It's like there was no little boys. There was no, in the first season of Vision, we got a master and apprentice. We got a Jedi turned to the dark side. We got just about every kind of story you could think of, every kind of pairing, and we had some that were young, powerful girls in the Force, and we had some that were young boys that becoming Jedi apprentices and stuff. We had twins who were dyads in the Force, and we had all the different spectrum. But every single one, even though the stories were different and there were different kind of styles of animation stuff, it was kind of the same young daughter, either can only lost her parents, or maybe it was her mom or her bigger sister or something, but there was usually an older female character that supported, but it was all the same kind of story beat. And I just kind of find that weird when they were talking about, they gave us no, they're saying that they got told nothing, that, but it was all that kind of same story beat. And it just, I got about halfway through, had to take a break, and then like 2 months later I watched the other half, because I just was kind of like, why is every one of these the same exact kind of story? When I saw such diversity in the type of stories in the first one, but this one's international, done by studios all over the world, and yet it doesn't feel like it. That was just me. I know a lot of people actually like season 2 better than season 1. A lot of people who aren't big into anime, and so they, you know, a lot of the art styles, a lot of the tropes and stuff went over their head, and they just said, this just doesn't feel like Star Wars. There's like 1 or 2 that I like, and the rest I don't. And I mean, that's how I felt about season 2, but I also, like I said, nothing hit like the Ronin or anything in season 2. So, which was sad, because the one I was most disappointed by was the one done by the people who do like the Wallace and Gromit ones, because I was really looking forward to that. But you know, it's just mixed bag. We had the Lego movie, the Re-Brick Build the World, where we got Darth Jar Jar. It was fun. It was a Lego Star Wars movie. They're fun. They're innocent. They make fun equally of the OT prequels and sequels. They don't hold their punches, and the jokes that they make at the sequels are the same type of jokes that the negative, you know, I have another podcast that you've probably already seen, so negative is not the right word to use, but those who aren't fans of the sequel trilogy, they use their jokes, they use their lines. They're not afraid to do that in these Lego movies, and, you know, make fun of themselves, and they hold none of it sacred. And I like that. It's fun parody, so to speak. And I love in that they had a moment when they were like trying to explain to Luke Skywalker, you know, why he needs to restore the galaxy to what it was once before. And he says, okay, I'm supposedly this world-renowned hero, but my nephew destroys every accomplishment I ever had in life, turns evil, kills my best friend, who is his dad, and I live a lonely life as a hermit on an island, and when I finally come out to confront him, I die from overexertion. Yeah, why would I want to make that world back? And so, it just was kind of one of those things that, all the complaints fans were having about it. But then we had The Acolyte. And, boy, I didn't watch The Acolyte. I'm going to come right out there. I don't hate watch stuff. And I knew, and people go, well, you have to give it a chance. No, I do not. Do not. They don't require, there is no check your fan card at the door. Have you seen this? Oh, you haven't, you're not a fan. None of that. I don't owe Lucasfilm, Disney, I don't owe any company my viewership. Their job is to market something to sell to me, and me to be drawn in by the marketing and want to see it. The Acolyte, from the get-go, there you have the actors doing interviews, and what are they talking about? Oh, it's the gayest Star Wars ever. That type of marketing isn't going to draw me in. That's, there's no problem what the characters are. That's, they want to tell stories that, but when you're given your 60 seconds of fame on a late night talk show or on the red carpet or whatever, and like, what's great about the show? it's the gayest show ever. That doesn't sell a show. Like, oh man, it's got tons of heart, lots of action, and really it's gonna bring Jedi and Sith Lord in the past, because it's set in the High Republic, and it's really gonna go into that lore and expand the universe. That's a generic, not telling anything but selling the show. You know, this is who my character likes to bang. That's not how you market a Star Wars show. Like, none of these actors. Then you have the director talking about, like, the main thing that she loves about, like, she's a huge Star Wars fan. Yeah, my favorite Star Wars movie, The Last Jedi. I feel like that's really the one that I draw close to. You know, I wasn't real interested, but then I saw The Last Jedi, and I'm like, ooh. You mean the most contested movie in the franchise that, like, completely divided the fandom? That's the movie that you want to emulate? Ooh. Even if you're somebody who's a fan of that, like, you're going in knowing that people are going to be upset if that's what they're looking to mimic. And when she started talking about in the caves and how the romantic tension between Kylo Ren and Rey, and she started giving out her theories of what it was all a metaphor for, and I'm like, oh, who in the world had those that were thinking in The Last Jedi that being in that cave and that experience Rey has, that was, yeah, I like to keep this little kid friendly. So, not that this is a program for kids, but yeah, the statements that she was making and what she was taking away from that movie. Like, did we watch the same movie? It's like, I don't even think, well, you know what? Maybe that is what Reylo see in that movie. I don't know. But some of those things, statements that she was saying, meanwhile, you had the one who was also coming out and talking about the movie that she was going to direct. This is a different person, but she's, she wants to make men feel uncomfortable. She wasn't referring to Star Wars when she was talking about that, but that was like the stuff that came out when she said she wanted to be the first person of female person to put on Star Wars. And everyone's like, okay, what about the female directors on The Mandalorian? What about Bryce Dallas Howard, or no, Patty Jenkins was gonna do a movie and they canceled it. She was gonna be the first woman. What about Marsha Lucas? You go back. There has been a feminine stamp on Star Wars right there from the beginning. She's part of what made Star Wars, and it was very arrogant, and it was somebody who didn't have any qualifications as far as a movie director to be doing something like a Star Wars picture. And so announced that was making headlines, all while Leslie Headland was doing all her stuff for the Acolyte and just really dragging that through the mud. So I was like, yeah, no. And they were saying, hey, the Sith, we're going to find out that they're misunderstood. No, you can't make the Sith misunderstood. Now, I saw clips. We're all over Twitter. Okay? The whole him being naked and seducing her, like everything, she had the same face. Like, she's playing two characters. She's not doing good about it. And him coming out and, she's going to kill him as a Jedi. She's going to kill him. Just like, I'm going to kill you. Like, not like they're going to do battle and then she's going to have to vanquish him because he's evil and he's battling against her. But I'm going to kill you. And then she sees his private parts with her jaw open wide. And then she decides not to kill him. Like, that... What are we watching here? Is this Star Wars, or is this the porn parody of Star Wars? Like, that's just sad. This is, and I feel like people who want Star Wars to age up or grow up, I was like, that's not it. You have another Jedi commit suicide after years of being in like some sort of forced bubble meditation state. And they go, you know what you did. And he commits suicide. Like, really, in this day and age where so many people are committing suicide, why would you paint that as like a proper way for somebody who's supposed to be the hero to deal with his lifetimes? You put a Wookiee Jedi in it. Such a cool idea. You give him a man bun. Oh, how could you do that to a Wookiee? And just so many things in that show. That the Dark Plagueis and the Yoda thrown in at the end just to create buzz online when the show was clearly not attached to things. You have the Night Sisters, which ones in the universe refer to them as witches, but they are using a form of the Force that is, a power and ability that they have, but it is not. They're not witches in the same way that, they're an alien species tapping into a power, and they're not necessarily tapping into the negative and positive like the Jedi and Sith. They're a different route. And in the books, the Mortis arc gave us, the father, the son, and the daughter, and then what I really thought Ahsoka was going to lead to was the mother, which is supposed to be the source of power for the Night Witches and stuff like that, and which is why I like their Mother Talzin and stuff like that. But no, these are straight up witches, like putting Eye of Newton stuff in a thing, and they're chanting like witches and cackling like witches. But they're using the Force. They're using the dark side of the Force like Sith, and they just want to be left alone, and they're not really evil because they're allegories for certain lifestyles now, LGBT stuff. But, like, why, if you were of that demographic, would you want Sith witches to represent how you're sympathetic? We're hunted like the bad guys with it. We just want to kill everybody. It's like, why can't we be left alone to practice our dark magic? It cuts at the core of everything that I think Star Wars is, and spits on it. And it's like, I don't care if it had cool effects or this. And I hear some people say it had the best effects ever. Some people say not. It had an enormous a budget, which every time something new comes out, supposedly it was even bigger. That more money was hidden somehow in the Acolyte, and I just don't understand that. But so no, I didn't watch it, but I know enough about it to know that I don't want to watch it. And a lot of people didn't watch it. It needed the power of one, the power of two, the power of many to watch it, and they didn't. And people are really upset that it didn't get views and it got canceled. Well, it was never greenlit. It didn't get canceled. It didn't get renewed. Isn't that what everybody said when Gina Carano didn't come back? It says Gina Carano wasn't fired. She just didn't get renewed. That's what I heard everybody say. Well, The Acolyte, it didn't get canceled. It just didn't get renewed. It just... They were never told they were getting a second season. They wrote a story that apparently requires a second season, but they were never greenlit for a second season. They just assumed it would be successful in that. But The Acolyte had tons of promotion. They had tons. And then the actress that came out and she rap danced. I was like, that's so bad, so bad. That was a low that I feel the franchise hadn't hit since The Last Jedi. I feel like Kenobi was one of those things where some people walked away liking it and stuff like that. A lot of people said it was bad, but it was a guilty pleasure because I just love seeing those actors on screen again. But that was one where it was like another chance for like a slam dunk. We've got these actors. We have all these prequel fans, with that, which I'm not one of them. I'm not a big prequel fan. But it was like, hey, if we do this right, we're going to have a slam dunk everybody's going to praise. And boom, didn't go over well. Same with Book of Boba Fett, Mando Season 3. People, I think if Mando Season 3 had come out a year earlier, it would have been accepted. But you had Andor, and so people who liked Andor didn't want to go back to the Mando universe at that point, because Andor was what they were looking for Star Wars. They might have been okay with Mandalorian, but Andor was what they wanted. So they didn't want to go back, and in some ways, Mandalorian got a little more cheesy, a little more goofy, and then it had some really bad elements, and Grogu was getting a little bit more over the top. So if you didn't like Grogu, you really weren't going to like Mando Season 3 at that point. But, like I said, if it had been sooner, before all that other stuff came out, I think people would have been more accepting of it. But at this point, people are more critical. They didn't like that. Ahsoka came out. That was another one. Like, I just don't understand how that was such a way it was. So I think, but Acolyte was a low. Acolyte was an extreme low. And then it was almost like they didn't want to acknowledge the Skeleton Crew. And so, like, there was almost no advertisement for it. And so it's not getting as good of views and stuff, but it's getting positive reviews. Positive reviews. And reviews in a way that I say Andor and Picard Season 3 did. Where you see, like, the negative typical outlets that say Disney's ruined Star Wars again. Is Star Wars truly dead this time? Is this the final nail in the coffin? Those channels that do the sales, when you see them split in half, and half love it and half hate it, like you saw with Picard Season 3, like you saw with Andor, and the ones that dislike it even go like more extreme because they can't understand how all these other people that used to agree with them suddenly love this. And then the people who normally are negative that love it, they're just praising it like, oh, it's finally something fun. Skeleton Crew, I wouldn't say it's that level of praise from some of these people. Like Drunk 3, it's like, it's fun. It's that Star Wars Theory. He's not saying it's the best Star Wars ever, but he's enjoying it. He's fun. It's good times. He says he looks forward to it every week. He loves talking about it. It's fun. And I think that it is a good outlet. It has refreshed mine. Now, I said I wasn't going to watch Andor Season 2. I'm more on the fence about that now. I'm definitely not going to dive right in. But if I see the same kind of reviews like that, I will give it a try. Andor Season 1, I was not a fan. And it was not because it offended my fandom in any way. It didn't do anything to Star Wars that was like, I can't believe they ruined this character, or that, they didn't ruin Luke or ruin Vader or ruin this character. No. But it didn't move the needle for me at all. And it was just too human, not enough droids, not enough aliens. It just didn't feel like you were on an alien world. The desert planets and that actually felt like, we're just, out at some desert here on Earth. It did not feel as different. So, but Season 2 is supposed to go much more fast-paced in its storytelling. That intrigues me. It's supposed to have much more action, K2SO, and honestly, I'm just on a high now after Skeleton Crew. Skeleton Crew is amazing. It is a little bit of Goonies, a little bit of E.T., you got Star Wars in there, you've got a little bit Pirates of the Caribbean, and what was the other? There was something else that I thought of the other day that I was like, yeah, it's very much this, and I can't think of it, but it's just fun. It's just fun, and it's referencing the Ewok Adventures. It's referencing the holiday special, the Star Tours, even Captain EO of all things. Ugh. But it's just all the practical aliens and tons of them. It's like the pirates are just full of aliens, which makes sense. after the Empire, which was very xenophobic, you would think that a good portion of alien species would have turned to piracy. And so it's that, of course, Jill White, I'm a huge fan. As a kid, Urkel was a role model of mine, and someone who I aspired to be. It's funny as that, like, I wanted to be a nerd like Urkel. And also, he voices Sonic the Hedgehog. He was the first voice of Sonic the Hedgehog in the first 3 Sonic cartoons. And, seeing him be part of Star Wars is just so cool. The adventure. And I have to say, something that is very true of E.T. and the Goonies, that the kid actors do a really good job. Now, there are times when they have very scripted lines, but unlike, say, Anakin in the prequels, say, like the Spy Kid movies or something like that, where you had kids where you could totally tell they were standing on a mark, trying to say a line, and they were just coming off wooden and that, like, not like actors. These kids can act. And these kids are going around and they're being kids. And that was something that you could tell the Goonies. One of the things that I think makes the Goonies work is there's so much where I think Spielberg just turned the camera on and let the kids do stuff and captured some of it so that it felt so natural. And I know a lot of people who are really critical of this. One thing I noticed is a lot of them are parents. A lot of them, they're upset at how the teenage girl behaves. Well, first of all, they established in the show that the girls are in a different grade than the boys. They're in a different class. So they're older. And she's bossy. My wife. Okay, so when I first met my wife, I was 13, and she was 15. Just getting her learner's permit. My brother's 8 years younger than me, and she's babysitting him. Now, I was old enough I didn't need a babysitter, but not old enough and responsible enough that they trusted me with my brother. But she would babysit my brother. And, she would assume that meant that she could command and direct me, and I was very much opposed to that idea. And we had a lot of boy versus girl knocking heads. What changed? How did we fall in love? This is a year later, but one, she grew, matured, and she, wasn't that bit of kind of bratty attitude or whatever. And I matured a lot too. And I developed qualities that she recognized and appreciated, and she started treating me with respect, and we grew to like each other. And we fell in love and got married. But I have a little daughter. She's constantly trying to work on her attitude. Like, she's 8 years old. The sass is insane. So when they're like, oh, this girl is insufferable, have you been around young girls? Like, this is just how they're built. This is just how they act, how they are at that age. And the whole boy versus girl vibe, like, I feel like if there wasn't this whole thing right now of everybody going, oh, they're trying to make everything woke, they're trying to make every superhero be a girl now and be a girl boss and all this, and Ray, Mary Sue, blah, 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 blah. That the kids aren't Mary Sue's. They fail a lot. And yes, there is some the kids fall into lucky situations, stuff like that. Did you watch The Goonies? Did you watch, like, sometimes it's the kids are bumbling along, and yes, somehow they survive. Okay, that's Jurassic Park, The Goonies. Anytime you put kids in perilous things, but it's in something that's family friendly, they're not getting eaten, they're not getting killed off, they're going to survive somehow. the beauty of it is not making it by necessarily their own hand. So there is a few times, like, oh, she knows, but they always do setup. Like, they showed her cheating out of getting in trouble by reprogramming her nanny droid to hide from her mom her bad behavior. Cut later, that they're, worried that they're going to get killed by a pirate robot, and she knows it's just a droid. Treat it like a droid, get it to override, and see her as the captain. So it sees her as the captain. Things. The show has been good. One of the things funny, everybody's talking about Jude Law, how much they'd seen him. I personally didn't know who Jude Law was. I didn't recognize him at all. I went and looked up and saw all the characters he played. I look at his picture from Skeleton Crew, and I can't recognize him as Watson. I just can't. I've seen him in Sky Captain: The World of Tomorrow. Love that character. Don't recognize him. so I was like, but I didn't recognize, like, everybody's talking about the name like it's somebody super famous. I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. And so it was funny seeing that I had seen a lot of stuff with him in it. He doesn't take me out at all. Not at all. Okay, winding down here. Loving the Skeleton Crew. Maybe I'll do one just on it after it comes all to completion, talking about it. But kind of wanted to talk about that. Was a positive. So as much as I felt the Acolyte was such a negative, that was a positive. And on the other side of that, you had the Bad Batch Season 3. And I felt that was a super positive too. So you have what might be considered the worst Star Wars that ever came out, in between two things that I thought was great. Now, the Bad Batch, each season better than the last. I've really liked how they developed all the characters. They had the guts to kill a main character of the crew off. The storytelling in the end, the different things that they brought in, it was so compelling. Such great, and mature in a lot of ways too. Yes, in some ways it wasn't. It was a cartoon. It's made for kids, but it was, kind of like Batman the Animated Series or something like that. Like, it's telling a mature story for kids. So yes, sometimes there's a little bit of kids humor in there. There's a little bit of things, but the characters take stuff seriously, especially the Bad Batch. They're always taking, Omega, who is the kid in the group, she's not always taking it seriously, but her brothers are. And seeing the loss, seeing them struggle with dealing with depression, dealing with trying to find your purpose in the world, following up things from, we saw the Zillo Beast from Clone Wars that was like just this loose thread that never got tied up. And it got tied up in Bad Batch. We found out a whole lot more about the Zillo Beast, what they were doing with it, what its purpose was. The only thing I will say is I didn't like the last episode. I didn't like the ending. It was like all adrenaline, all stakes, and then it was just kind of like, we got away, we found that peaceful island, we stepped out of the war, we raised her, and then as a teenager, she said, well, I'm an adult now, or not teen, like late teens, early 20s, whatever. I'm an adult now, and I'm joining the rebellion. We're about to go attack Yavin, the Death Star at Yavin, and I'm meeting up with them, and it's my time to shine. Was a really weak ending. So you have this time skip. She's, a young adult now, and they're all old clones. So, because you kind of assume that they were all going to die, because we don't see them in anything else later. So they're not with Captain Rex and his crew when we meet up with them in Rebels. So you kind of assume they're dead by then. No, they were in hiding that whole time, raising her. That was kind of... basically what it was is Bad Batch is done. We're not going to make a fourth season, so we just have to say it all wrapped up. Now, the whole adventure, her being captured and stuff, but they were actively trying to capture her. Now, they did kill off Rampart. Makes you think, well, he was the main one that was eager to get her, so maybe without him, the project kind of just dies. But, yeah, it doesn't, because we know that that's the same project that they're trying to get Baby Yoda's blood for, to make Force clones. And hers, one of the things that I think a lot of people had confusion, Omega didn't have the Force. And I like that they didn't give her the Force. Everyone kept waiting, oh, she's going to drop, she's going to be yet another Jedi. No, she didn't have the Force. Her blood was able to be infused with the Force. So basically they could take midichlorians out of Grogu, put it into her blood, and actually give her the Force. And so that was the key to creating clones that they could infuse with midichlorians or M-count or whatever they want to call it to gain the Force, so that you could make Force-sensitive clones. That's what we saw Gideon doing in Mandalorian Season 3. So we see that this is kind of a connecting plot. She was like the missing link in being able to create that. And maybe the research from her blood was later found by them and used. They didn't need her physically at that point, but they did need a specimen like Baby Yoda, Grogu, that had a large M count to be able to draw that from and inject into clones. But the ending was just kind of a little weak. It makes me wonder, are they going to do another animated show set post A New Hope? So basically, New Hope to Return of the Jedi, and have adventures with Han, Leia, and Luke, and stuff like that. But we can't have adventures with Han, Leia, and Luke every day because, canon and all this stuff. So we're going to make another group of rebels. Maybe a squadron of X-Wing fighters or something like that. And we're going to put Omega in that crew. And she's going to be kind of the central character. We built her up. We're going to put her in that. But because it's set in that time, we can have Luke Skywalker show up. We can have Leia or Han show up. We can have Hera and Zeb and Chopper and Sabine from Rebels. They can show up. So we have all these characters we've created. They could show up. We're going to center it around new characters we're going to create, headed by Omega. And then all our legacy OT characters, though, were active in that time period and can show up as well. So we had this crossover synergy that we can have epic big moments that people like. It can be in a time period that people like, but focus on our new original characters. I see that as being what's going to happen, and then maybe bring her into live action later. Like if we build her up as being a friend of Hera's and Zeb's and all that, then she could show up in Ahsoka Season 2. She could show up in the different Mando movie or whatever, So, and they never addressed her and Boba Fett meeting, seeing as they consider her like a pure unaltered clone of Jango, but just female. So it would be interesting for them to meet. Everybody wanted that to happen, but they could do that as adults. Other thing, just how that works, how that doesn't work. I could see that going good. I could see that. But going into 2025, what am I looking forward to? So I already said, like, Andor Season 2 might give that a chance. The rest of Skeleton Crew, looking forward to that. But the big thing is I want to know what they're going to do animated next. We already know we're getting a third season of Visions, and it's going back to Japanese. Why is it doing that? Because Star Wars Celebration is in Japan, so it's going to be a huge thing because those are going to be all those studios and different things are going to be people that the Japanese people are going to recognize. They're going to get excited about. Woohoo, we can celebrate this, versus other stuff they're not going to care about. That's why it's going back to being Japanese founded. And I think the first season got a better response than the second season, and so I think that's a big part of it too. But I imagine if they do a season 4, it will go back to being everybody again. But so I'm looking forward to Visions. Tales of will probably have another one of those. Will it be Tales of the Bounty Hunter? Yeah, it'll be Tales of the Bounty Hunter, but we won't actually get bounty hunters. We'll get syndicates or something, because that seems to be what they do. They do a Tales of this, and then it's not quite those. So instead of bounty hunters, it'll be like Tales of the Bounty Hunters, and we'll see two smugglers. It'll be it'll be a smuggler and an assassin, and it'll be what's her name, Ventress, as an assassin, and it'll be Tales of the Bounty Hunter, but she's not a bounty hunter, she's an assassin. Stuff like that. But you could really have fun with Tales of the Bounty Hunter, or they could go back to doing another Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Sith, just Tales of the Empire. There's so many things that they could do. Tales of the Clones, lots of stories that they could do with that. So I expect to see another one of those, but I'm really hoping for another animated series, because while they're cutting it back on the live action, and it looks like Andor Season 2 is going to be the only live-action show on Disney Plus in a year, and I'm okay with that. Especially as they're prepping and trying to go back to the movies, because I think when you have Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau stretched too thin, and they're letting the other people and not having that much oversight, we saw with stuff like Book of Boba Fett and Kenobi that it suffered because of that, and Ahsoka. I think Filoni having full control over that, but not having Jon Favreau there, helping him, really affected Ahsoka. It wasn't. I have a feeling that if Ahsoka was animated, it would have been amazing. No restraints but I just don't think Filoni fully understands how to direct live action yet, and to run the show. And I feel like he was learning, and unfortunately, he wants to have control over Ahsoka, but because it was his learning curve, I feel like the character of Ahsoka took a huge hit because of it. That said, I know that supposedly filming on Ahsoka has begun, so I'm assuming we're going to see rumors of that in 2025. But there's just a lot of stuff to look forward to. I'm in a hopeful mood because of that. But what I'm really hoping for is 2025. If it means less content, good. But I just don't want the lows. Give us 1 or 2 highs, and just no lows. We don't need an Acolyte. Don't give us another Acolyte. Don't give us another just have things that people internally that wasn't that bad. Even the people who are like, Star Wars is dead, but this was okay, but Star Wars as a whole is dead. Let them say that, but we need a couple of just steady goods without the really bad to drive that back up, that Star Wars is dead mentality. And I think that is what would be great. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Star Wars in 2025 is just, I'm not wanting a lot. I'm just wanting there not to be a super significant low. When we do that, great. Anyways, this is what I do here. Backyard Chartist, Random Thoughts Podcast. I babble about my opinions, and then hope that you guys will put yours in the comments below and talk to me either on here or on Twitter. I'm Back TARDIS on Twitter. It will always be Twitter, never be X. But what did you like? What did you dislike? Do you completely disagree? Do you think the Acolyte is peak and that Skeleton Crew is dribble? Let me know. I am not afraid of opinions, but always be civil. And I will catch you in the next video.
Greetings, listener. Just a reminder that the podcast you just heard is a proud member of the Red 5 Network family. Red 5 Network offers you a great variety of shows you'll be sure to love. So the next time you're itching for quality content, make sure you head over to Red 5 Network. You'll find this podcast along with a whole lot more. All wings report in. It's the Red 5 Network.